WCBI Sports 2024 SEC Preview Show. Sponsored by Fastnet, powered by 4 County, Mama Justice, and Monroe County Farm Bureau.
Welcome into our SEC Preview special. John Sokoloff joined by Gracie Barra and Cam Dyer. I don't think there's ever been this much excitement heading into not just college football season with the expanded playoff, but an SEC football season. You got Texas and Oklahoma. Ole Miss has more hype than it's had in years, and Mississippi State has a new coach. So I don't remember being this excited about the SEC.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think there's as many unknowns as there might be in any season in recent memory, at least, with the new teams coming in, seeing how they're going to fit, and I just can't wait for it to get started.
I mean, I'm always excited for football season, but with all the new components to it, I feel like a kid on Christmas.
Yeah, I can't wait. So how about we begin our preview with the Ole Miss Rebels. They are entering their most anticipated season in at least a decade. Ole Miss won 11 games last year for the first time in program history. They return plenty of big names from that team, like quarterback Jackson Dart, receiver Trey Harris, tight end Caden Prescorn. That list just goes on and on. They also have the top-rated transfer portal class in the country, according to 247 Sports. The job Lane Kiffin has done in his time in Oxford is incredible. The Rebels are 34-15 since he's gotten there, and now with 12 teams in the playoff, there's a plethora of outside pressure.
I think I apply more pressure on myself than any outside source. I really do. So, like you talk about last season, the two things that come to my mind are the 2 losses. I should have done a better job in those. I do get concerned, obviously. I talk extensively about the 2 players because I think that does come at them nonstop nowadays, because of phones. And so, yeah, that's a big concern of mine, and we talk about it all the time. Now there's more of it than we've ever had here, for sure.
Look, when you're preseason number 6, you're going to have a ton of pressure on you. I mean, that just comes with it. College football coaches have more pressure on them than they've ever had, I would argue. I mean, you see this cycle just continue to move. But when you talk about Ole Miss, I mean, we're not going to talk about the rat poison and keeping that outside noise, away from them. We're going to talk about Jackson Dart and his return in his 3rd season as the Rebels starter, and he's probably the most important piece coming back.
Definitely. His senior season, his 3rd season in Oxford. There's a lot of talk, when we're talking way early preseason about who could be in New York City for the Heisman Award ceremony. And Jackson Dart's name keeps getting thrown in there. And I think the biggest key to that and him getting there at the end of the year is staying healthy.
Sure. We know he loves to use his legs, right? Almost 400 rushing yards last year, 7 rushing touchdowns. We've seen him do a complete flip over a linebacker last season. Jackson Dart, a huge guy too. He's not afraid of running the ball. So, yeah, staying healthy, and the Rebels will certainly have a shot. Cam, I know you are very excited about the Rebels transfer portal class. We'll get to that in a moment, and we're actually going to touch on some of it right now. Let's take a look at the Ole Miss depth chart this year. Trey Harris coming back. I mean, I thought he was going to maybe go to the NFL too. That was huge. What else kind of sticks out to you about the transfers from the offensive side of the ball, Cam?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you got Juice Wells coming in there, slotting in as either probably the number 2 or number 3 receiver, but you could arguably say Trey Harris, Antoine Wells, and Jordan Watkins, they're all kind of number 1 options. I think there's going to be a game in the season where each one of those guys really, really goes off, but I'm looking forward to the defensive side of the ball. That's where things, in the 2 games that they did lose to Alabama and Georgia, where things seem to get a little bit off track for Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin even said, our guys just don't look like the guys on Georgia and Alabama, and that starts up front, man. And Walter Nolan was the top transfer in the country coming over from Texas A&M. He's going to be playing defensive tackle, and that is huge to get some pass rush from a guy up the middle. You don't get that very often, and pairing him with a guy like J.J. Pegues, they're going to be able to fill space and push the pocket from the interior, which is going to be huge.
Yeah, and that defensive line, I mean, you were mentioning it, Princely Umanmielen, another huge guy that they brought in, that kind of combination, and you touched on this too, the experience with Pegues and Jared Ivey, but also, those new guys to kind of set them over the top with the length that this defensive unit's going to have. And I was in Athens for that Ole Miss-Georgia game. The difference at the line of scrimmage, I mean, it was massive. And we're not saying that Ole Miss was going to turn into a Georgia or an Alabama line overnight, But the fact that they're inching closer and they have all those guys back, this team is going to be scary this year. Grace, I mean, when you were looking at kind of transfers and this roster this year, what sticks out to you the most?
Back to the offensive side of the ball, Juice Wells. I think that wide receiver core was already so scary without him, and then you add him in there with Trey Harris, and then Caden Priestcorn coming back, huge. But just to have so many weapons for Jackson Dart, who had over 3,300 yards through the air last year, just makes them even more dangerous.
Yeah,
it's that
and Ulysses Bentley too.
Yeah.
It's that depth. I mean,
literally
these guys,
looking at the depth chart, there are names behind the guys who are starting that you're like, that guy's scary.
They could play. And we also forgot about Jordan Watkins, another receiver who's a great pass-catching threat. You alluded to it earlier. All of these guys, Ulysses Bentley and a group of running backs who are going to have to replace Quinshawn Judkins too. But, Ulysses Bentley showed at some points last year that he could be an RB1 in the SEC. So they are just loaded on offense.
And Daquan Wright, too, who's backing up Caden Priestcorn. They could even go into two tight end sets too, because he was really great at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, guys, I mean, SEC football guys are going to get banged up. So having that two deep where you're confident whoever's going to be in there is going to be huge, especially going down the stretch.
Yeah, and again, this depth chart that we had, not official, just what we're thinking based on being at fall camp, looking at the roster and all of that fun stuff. We like to think about what could happen and the theoretical stuff of college football. That's half the fun of being a football fan. So coming up next, Mississippi State gearing up for year one of the Jeff Lebby era. We'll preview the Bulldog season next in sports. Welcome back to our SEC special. One of the crazy parts about college football is the college football head coaching cycle. And Mississippi State has a new head coach in Jeff Lebby. There's so much excitement and a lot of unknown about this team. We're going to get to it in a moment, but let's talk a little more about their first-year head coach in Jeff Lebby. He spent the past 5 years as offensive coordinator at UCF, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma. His offenses put up at least 39 points per game in each of those seasons. This year, the Bulldogs will be led by Baylor transfer quarterback Blake Shapen. The area with the most question marks is the defense. Linebackers and leaders Buki Watson and Jet Johnson are gone. And MSU's defensive coordinator is Coleman Hutzler. He worked as Alabama's special teams and outside linebackers coach before heading to Starkville. Now here's a look at Lebby's expectations for the defense.
We want guys that play the game in a violent way. We want to get the ball out, get the ball back, and guys that play with relentless effort. I say it all the time, but never seen a great play made without great effort. And I think our guys understand that, and that's what we're looking for. We want it to look like a defense that's playing with their hair on fire every single snap.
Well, that's obviously something that a Mississippi State fan is going to want to hear when there are so many question marks surrounding a defense. We're going to get to that in a moment, but any coach that is going into their first year, the expectations really depends on what the fan base is used to, in my opinion. Now, we know that Jeff Lebby is going to score points. We've even seen it when he was at Ole Miss. I mean, those offenses put up a ton of points as well. But Cam, what do you think success looks like in year one of the Jeff Lebby era?
Ultimately, I think an ideal situation really is making it to a bowl game. Going 6-6, making it back to the postseason, I think would be a really good kind of thing to point at that says, hey, we are on the right track here. But it's a tough schedule. It's a gauntlet. So I think even if they aren't able to make a bowl game, that doesn't mean it's a lost season.
Sure.
You really want to see this Jeff Lebby-led offense make strides here in the SEC. I mean, last year's offense, let's not beat around the bush. It was abysmal.
Horrible.
At times.
Awful.
A tough watch.
Yeah, it was a tough watch. And Jeff Lebby is coming in, bringing the Showtime mentality. Sure. He wants to bring some excitement into MSU. And so if in these tough games, they might not win all of them, but if their offense can show out and keep them close, I think that is a great point to say, hey, we are going in the right direction here.
Yeah, and if anything's interesting to me here, it's Mississippi State's identity has been so much on the defensive side of the ball in recent years. Last year, the offense was so bad. So now Zach Selman's saying, hey, we've got a guy in here who's going to score points. He's done it every year he's called plays. He's calling the plays this year. I think that is something that's made the fan base, really excited about this team and this regime. We're going to get to the defense in a moment, but let's take a look at the Bulldogs depth chart here. Kelly Akari, Grace, coming from UTEP, that was one of the big splashes from the portal for the Bulldogs. What else kind of excites you about this offense?
Definitely having Creed back. I think he could be a real weapon for them. Kevin Coleman, definitely Seydou Traore. That was him in that VO we just watched there, catching a touchdown. But I think he could be really talented for them at the tight end position. Obviously, Blake Shapen, they need him to stay healthy. He was Baylor's quarterback when they won the Big 12, the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma State. Cam, you're the Baylor guy?
That's right, yeah. He won, he came in after Gary Bohannon got hurt.
Right.
And that's where he kind of burst onto the scene. So he's shown flashes of greatness. Now it's going to be putting that together week in and week out in a tough SEC.
Yeah, and we just saw the offensive line. You know, you got to be able to protect Shapen. That is what Jeff Lebby was so complimentary of, you know, throughout fall camp, the O-line. He's a former O-lineman, so if anyone knows what makes a good offensive line, it's him. But Grace, this defense, you know, you have a defensive coordinator who hasn't been one before in the past, and a lot of new faces. Yeah,
you're not going to recognize a lot of these names on the screen. And MSU's top 3 tacklers from last season, Jet Johnson, Buki Watson, and DeCamerion Richardson, all gone. So they're going to need guys to step up into those roles. And obviously, Stone Blanton is one of those guys we're looking at to do that, transferring in here. He's a Mississippi guy. A lot of people are excited for him to be back in the Magnolia State. But there's a lot of question marks surrounding this team when it comes to defense because the identity of a Jeff Lebby team is so thought to be offense.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. And when we were talking about earlier, Cam, what does success look like? Even if you don't make a bowl game, this fan base is going to want to see progress throughout the year. Can you make adjustments? Did the team get better as the season went on? And there are so many voids to fill on defense. That's really going to be the part where people are going to want to see improvement. Stone Blanton, he hasn't been here before. It's, I mean, a new defense, a new guy in there, you know, at the linebacker core, there are a couple of spots that are up for grabs. They're going to have to rely on a lot of new faces to come in there and really make an impact. So a lot of unknown with this Mississippi State team, and we're going to find out what kind of guy Jeff Lebby is when it comes to kind of culture and the day-to-day, because that's always an unknown with a new coach. If a guy's never been a coach before, how's he going to run the program, and what's the culture going to be like?
Yeah, I mean, and let's face it, Coleman Hutzler, he's never been a defensive coordinator, so we don't know what his defense is going to look like, even schematically. When he's been asked about it, he's kind of kept it close to the vest, saying, we're going to be a very multiple defense. Well, that sounds good, but what is going to be your bread? What's going to be your bread and butter, right? Like, what are you going to do when you need to stop every single time? Are they going to be aggressive, or are they going to kind of play a shell defense and try to just keep the ball in front of them? We don't know. That's something I'm going to be looking forward to just every single game to see what that scheme's going to look like.
It'll be interesting to see what the Jeff Lebby era looks like. But coming up next on our SEC preview special, Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference. We'll discuss what they bring coming up. Welcome back to our SEC preview special. The conference is getting bigger from 14 to 16. Texas and Oklahoma, probably 2 top 10 college football brands, in my opinion.
I think that's safe to say.
I think it is. So joining what was already the best conference in college football, there are so many things to be excited about when it comes to it. Grace, what excites you the most about the Longhorns and Sooners coming to the Southeastern Conference?
Bringing in that talent to an already talented, the top tier of college football. Iron sharpens iron. That is a college football coach's favorite saying. So when you bring in 2 of these teams that are already at the top and you have them playing other top teams, it's just going to make the conference even better. And after Michigan won the national championship last year, I'm sure the SEC is itching to have another SEC champion, and I think this will surely set them up to do that.
Definitely. I mean, you look at Oklahoma, even when they had Lincoln Riley, it wasn't that long ago, but you know, Oklahoma was winning the Big 12 every year. They were in the playoff what seemed like every year. And Texas with Steve Sarkisian really seems like they figured things out. And they obviously made it to the college football playoff last year. Cam, what excites you?
That's right. I mean, y'all know I'm a Texas guy here. I didn't grow up a Texas fan or
Not
a Texas
UT,
A&M fan. No, the state of Texas. I love the state of Texas from there. And man, bringing back that Texas A&M rivalry, I mean, it's just good for the soul. It's good for the state.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of the most bitter rivalries in all of college football. That's safe to say. And people, I mean, younger than us, Grace, like, they don't even remember what this rivalry was really like. I mean, it is.
Stopped in like 2012,
This is, yes. So this is going to be something that the rivalry is renewed. And I promise you, I know it's been, over a decade, but man, that hatred is still there. And I can't wait. November 30th, Texas going into Kyle Field.
It'll be a good one.
It's going to be a blast.
Well, let's see what both the coaches, Steve Sarkisian and Brent Venables, think about joining the SEC.
This is the elite conference in college football, and we're fortunate enough to be part of it. And we won't do anything without having a level of respect of who we play, where we're playing them, the types of players that they have, the coaching that they have. And I think on the flip side of that, we have to go earn their respect. We're not going to get anything in this deal. Nothing's going to be free.
Everything. Again, about this league is about parity. It's about competitive depth, and it's a one-possession league. As we've looked at it, outside in, you've got incredibly challenging venues. Every member of this conference, top to bottom, is committed to the excellence that this conference represents. And so, as a football program, being in our first year, we are really looking forward to the challenge.
It's just so awesome. I can't wait for some of these matchups. We got Ole Miss hosting Oklahoma. That's a conference game now. And the Bulldogs, Mississippi State, will travel to Austin this year to play Texas in UT's first game in the Southeastern Conference. That's my answer. You guys both had great ones. Mine, it's kind of similar to yours with the iron sharpening iron. I'm very excited for these matchups to kind of see, and at least, with a lot of these conferences kind of having teams jump from conference to conference, it's nice that this is at least somewhat regional-ish compared to some of the others. I mean,
maybe
it feels
better
somewhat
than the Big
right.
Ten.
Bringing back sort of Southwest Conference vibes a little bit with the Arkansas and stuff like that. Yeah, it makes a little bit more sense.
There's no cross-country flights involved here.
No, we won't have Rutgers playing against Oregon in a big game or anything here in the SEC. So I can't wait. Coming up next, we'll have our dark horse teams and our overrated teams heading into this season. One of the best parts about college football is debating friends about teams. What teams you like, what teams you don't like. So, I mean, look, I know we're on TV and this is a professional environment right now. How about we do a little debating and we kind of share with you our dark horse teams and our teams that we think are a little overrated. Now, both of you, I mean, if I got something I really disagree with, I'm going to let you know.
I'll try to be civil here. That's
Cam, all right then, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I mean, let's first go with the dark horse team. I've got the Missouri Tigers. Now, they're ranked 11th in the country preseason, but I feel like they're left out of most SEC championship conversations. I mean, Mizzou is returning quarterback Brady Cook, and he is one of the best targets in the country coming back. Luther Burden was a second-team All-American as a sophomore last year, and he should give defenses headaches all year long. And on top of that, Mizzou has a relatively soft schedule. They only play 3 preseason ranked teams, and the only one ranked higher than them is number 5 Alabama. With all that being said, I think Mizzou has a serious shot of securing a spot in the SEC title game, and I'd be shocked if they're not in the 12-team playoff.
All right, fair enough. Grace, I know that we had a little bit of debates. We were texting each other kind of back and forth about, who we should pick, because it's not exactly easy. And
we
there's
can't
a
all
lot
pick the same team.
No, we can't all pick the same team. And there's a lot of different arguments that can be made about why you pick a certain team. It could be a dark horse in this way. It could be a dark horse, with another definition of the word. So who are you rolling with?
So my dark horse team this season is Texas A&M. The Aggies found themselves in the preseason top 25 at number 20. They're coming off a 7-6 season where A&M decided to pay the $77 million buyout to fire head coach Jimbo Fisher. Mid-season, Mike Elko now at the helm after helping turn around Duke football in just 2 seasons. A&M has plenty of talent. Shout out Tupelo's Tristan Jernigan, starting his freshman season there, and now they've got an even better coach to lead them. And while they've still got some tough games on the schedule, I want to note those are all at home. So they've certainly got a shot at making this new 12-team playoff if they really can get some wins together.
Isn't that what's so fun about the 12-team playoff, too? Teams that we wouldn't be talking about as playoff contenders, now we are.
You can lose a couple games.
That makes this just so much fun.
Yeah, it definitely does. Awesome. And also, a team like A&M with the resources, you're always going to think that they're in the mix.
Money talks,
with the money talks. You know the deal.
You can pay a $77 million buyout. Imagine the players.
Oh, my goodness. I can't even imagine that. Well, my dark horse team is Oklahoma. The Sooners are ranked 16th in the country in the AP preseason poll. Brent Venables' team is led by Jackson Arnold. The sophomore quarterback was a 5-star coming out of high school. He was Dylan Gabriel's backup last season and now takes the reins following Gabriel's departure for Oregon. Their over-under for wins is 7.5. I got them going 9-3. A 10-win season with this tough schedule, likely going to get them in the playoff, but that probably goes for any team in the Southeastern Conference. You go 10-2, you're probably good. All right, real quick, why don't we talk about our teams that we think are overrated heading in this year. I'll get us started with that. I think LSU with a 9.5 over/under is ridiculous. I think that Garrett Nussmeier, I mean, we don't really know what he'll bring as a consistent starter, so I got the under.
Texas, I can't elaborate much on it, but I think that they have a really tough non-con and that it's going to be difficult with their secondary.
And I got the lesser UT, Tennessee, man. I don't think they got it this year.
All right, well, there we go.
Simple.
There you have it. All right, we'll be right back. All right, we got a little bit of a continuation from our last segment, but now we're going to go back to Mississippi State and Ole Miss. So we kind of had some predictions in the last segment, so now we're going to be, a lot more finite with our predictions
write
here.
These down, and then you can hold them all over our heads when we're either
tweet
right
at
or
us.
inevitably wrong.
There you go, yeah. Record predictions we'll go with here. Cam, let's start with you, and we'll start with Mississippi State. What do you think for this year?
Yeah, man, I think it's going to be a rough transition with Coach Jeff Lebby. I really do. And so I'm going to go with 4-8 this season. Again, I don't necessarily think that means it's all over for them, but I think it's going to be a rough transition. This defense, I just don't have much confidence in them. I'd love to be proven wrong.
Sure.
But that's kind of where I stand with the Bulldogs.
Grace, what about you?
I'm going to go 6-6, a little bit more optimistic than Cam, but I don't think it's going to be a perfect season for the Bulldogs, to say the least.
Sure.
They have a nicer non-con than some of the other teams in the SEC, and they have some teams that are at the bottom of the SEC that they'll be playing where I think they can get a couple wins.
Okay, I kind of agree with you there on that front, but I've got one win less than you. I got 5-7. They got a lot of winnable games. Toledo, Arizona State, Eastern Kentucky, UMass. If you get those and win one more SEC game, that puts you at 5. That could get you closer to Grace. All right, real quick, Ole Miss, Cam, what do you got?
They're going 11-1, man. They're going to be a playoff team in my eyes. They have a chance to win every single game, and I think this is the year for them.
Grace?
I'm going to go 10-2.
All right, 10-2. I have 10-2 as well. The big games that come on the schedule for me that I really look out for at LSU and home against Georgia and OU. But I think Ole Miss will make the playoff this year. Lane's done a heck of a job. Thank you so much for tuning in, and enjoy football season.
The WCBI Sports 2024 SEC Preview Show. Sponsored by Fastnet, powered by 4 County, Mama Justice, and Monroe County Farm Bureau.